The Roman monetary system did not appear suddenly as a sophisticated structure. It evolved gradually alongside Rome's transformation from a small city-state into one of the most powerful empires in history. In its earliest days, Rome relied on barter and primitive forms of exchange. Livestock, grain, and metal objects served as measures of value before the introduction of standardized currency. As Rome expanded through conquest and trade, the need for a reliable and uniform monetary system became essential. Trade across regions required a medium of exchange that was widely accepted and trusted. This need laid the foundation for Rome's coin-based economy. The earliest Roman money consisted of bronze bars, known as rood. These were irregularly shaped pieces of bronze valued by weight rather than by face value. Over time, Rome introduced signatum, stamped bronze ingots issued by the state. This marked an early attempt by Roman authorities to control money issuance. By the 4th century BCE, Rome began minting true coins. Bronze coins known as grave were cast with standardized weights and official symbols. These coins represented state authority and enabled taxation, military payments, and market transactions. The shift from barter to coinage had profound implications. It allowed the Roman state to collect taxes more efficiently, pay soldiers regularly, finance infrastructure projects, control economic activity. Money became a tool of governance rather than just trade. Rome's monetary system was deeply connected to its political structure. Coinage carried symbols of power, gods, and political authority. As Rome evolved from a republic to an empire, money increasingly reflected imperial control. This foundation laid the groundwork for one of the most complex and influential financial systems of the ancient world. The Roman currency system became increasingly sophisticated as the republic expanded. By the 3rd century BCE, Rome introduced the denarius, a silver coin that would become the backbone of the Roman economy for centuries. Alongside it existed bronze coins for daily transactions and gold coins for large payments and reserves. The primary Roman denominations included denarius, silver, used for trade, wages, and taxes sestertius, bronze brass, common for everyday purchases. As bronze, small value transactions, aureus gold, high value payments, and state reserves. This multi-metal system allowed Rome to manage both domestic and international trade. Silver facilitated regional commerce, while gold was used in diplomacy, military payments, and large-scale state expenses. Roman coins were minted under strict state control. The Senate initially supervised coin production, but over time, emperors took direct control. Coin imagery became a political instrument. Emperors placed their portraits on coins, reinforcing legitimacy and authority across the empire. Currency standardization was one of Rome's greatest economic achievements. Roman coins circulated across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Merchants trusted Roman money because of its consistent metal content and state backing. However, maintaining this system required access to precious metals. Rome relied heavily on silver and gold mines in Spain, Gaul, and later the Balkans. Military conquest often aimed at securing resource-rich territories, highlighting the connection between money, warfare, and expansion. The Roman currency system enabled long-distance trade, efficient taxation, military logistics, economic integration of conquered regions, yet this system was not immune to pressure. As the empire expanded, costs rose, and maintaining metal purity became increasingly difficult. These pressures would later challenge Rome's monetary stability.
Taxation was the backbone of Roman wealth and state power. As Rome expanded from a republic into a vast empire, managing revenue became one of its greatest administrative achievements. Roman taxation was not centralized in the modern sense, but it was systematic, diversified, and deeply integrated into governance. In the early republic, taxes were relatively limited. Roman citizens paid property-based taxes during wartime, known as tributum, which funded military campaigns. In times of peace, this tax was often suspended, reflecting Rome's reliance on conquest rather than internal taxation for revenue. As Rome conquered new territories, taxation shifted outward. Provinces became the primary source of income. Conquered regions paid annual taxes in money, goods, or both. These taxes supported the Roman army, administration, and infrastructure. Provincial taxes included land tax, tributum soli, based on agricultural output, poll tax, tribute on individuals, customs duties, portoria, on trade goods, mining, and resource taxes. Tax collection was often outsourced to private contractors known as public. These tax farmers paid the state up front and then collected taxes from provinces for profit. While efficient, this system frequently led to corruption and exploitation. Under the empire, taxation became more centralized. Emperors introduced reforms to reduce abuse and stabilize revenue. Augustus reorganized provincial administration, improving census data and tax assessment. This allowed Rome to extract wealth more predictably and sustainably. Taxes were paid in coin whenever possible, reinforcing the importance of the monetary system. Grain taxes also played a critical role, especially in feeding Rome's population. Egypt, in particular, became the empire's grain basket. Tax revenue funded the Roman military road networks and aqueducts, public buildings, and cities. Welfare programs such as grain distributions. Rome's ability to extract wealth from its vast territories allowed it to maintain dominance for centuries. However, increasing tax pressure over time contributed to social strain and economic imbalance.
The Roman army was the single largest expense of the state. Managing military wages and logistics required an advanced financial system. Rome understood that a loyal paid army was essential to maintaining power. Roman soldiers were paid regular wages, initially in bronze and later primarily in silver denarii. Over time, pay increased as emperors competed for loyalty. In addition to wages, soldiers received bonuses, donativa, land grants upon retirement, shares of war loot. Military spending expanded dramatically as borders grew. Forts, roads, weapons, and supply chains demanded constant funding. Taxes and war spoils financed these costs. Conquest was not only political, it was economic. Victorious campaigns brought gold, silver, slaves, and resources into the treasury. These inflows temporarily strengthened Roman finances and supported coin minting. However, reliance on conquest created long-term risk. As expansion slowed, new revenue declined while expenses remained high. Maintaining large standing armies without continuous conquest strained the monetary system. To meet rising costs, emperors increasingly manipulated coinage. Silver content was gradually reduced, allowing more coins to be minted from the same amount of metal. While this helped short-term financing, it weakened trust in currency. The army's financial demands shaped Roman monetary policy. Emperors who failed to pay soldiers risked rebellion. This dynamic linked money directly to political survival. Although Rome did not have banks in the modern sense, it developed a sophisticated financial system based on private bankers, credit networks, and legal contracts. These institutions played a crucial role in managing wealth, facilitating trade, and supporting state finances. Roman bankers, known as argentari, operated primarily in cities and commercial centers. They provided services such as money changing, deposits, loans, and payment clearing. Markets and forums often hosted banking activity, where transactions were publicly recorded to ensure trust. Bankers accepted deposits from individuals and businesses, safeguarding wealth and enabling transfers without physical movement of coin. This reduced theft risk and improved efficiency. Written orders allowed payments between accounts, resembling early forms of cashless transactions. Credit was central to Roman economic life. Loans financed trade expeditions, land purchases, construction projects, and political campaigns. Interest rates varied depending on risk, social status, and economic conditions. While excessive interest was regulated by law, enforcement was inconsistent. Wealthy elites dominated financial activity. Senators and equestrians often acted as lenders, investing capital in agriculture, trade, and government contracts. Although senators were legally restricted from certain commercial activities, they frequently used intermediaries to bypass rules. The Roman legal system supported financial contracts. Courts enforced debt obligations, collateral agreements, and inheritance claims. This legal protection encouraged lending and economic activity across the empire. However, credit also carried risks. Debt crises occurred when borrowers defaulted or economic shocks reduced liquidity. During such periods, the state sometimes intervened by postponing debt payments or injecting money into circulation. Rome's banking and credit systems supported economic integration, but increased inequality. Access to credit favored elites, while small farmers and workers often fell into debt, contributing to social tension. Wealth in ancient Rome was highly concentrated. A small elite controlled vast landholdings, financial assets, and political influence, while the majority lived modestly or in poverty. This imbalance shaped Roman society and its economic policies. Land ownership was the primary source of wealth. Large estates known as latifundia dominated agriculture, worked by slaves and tenant farmers. These estates produced surplus goods for export and profit, enriching elite families. Urban wealth came from trade, banking, government contracts, and political office. Senators and equestrians accumulated fortunes through state connections and provincial administration. Political power and wealth reinforced each other. The lower classes relied on wages, small-scale trade, or subsistence farming. In cities, many depended on state welfare programs such as grain distributions. While these programs prevented unrest, they did not address structural inequality. Slavery was a major economic factor. Enslaved people provided labor in agriculture, mining, households, and industry. This reduced labor costs for elites, but limited wage growth and economic mobility for free workers. Inequality contributed to periodic unrest and reform efforts. Leaders such as the Gracchi brothers attempted land redistribution, but resistance from elites limited success. Economic inequality remained a persistent issue throughout Roman history. Despite extreme disparities, Roman wealth management sustained the empire for centuries. However, over time, concentration of wealth reduced economic resilience and weakened social cohesion. One of the most significant challenges Rome faced in managing money and wealth was inflation caused by coin debasement. As imperial expenses increased and new sources of precious metals declined, Roman authorities turned to altering the composition of their currency to meet financial demands. Coin debasement involved reducing the silver or gold content of coins while maintaining their face value. This allowed the state to mint more coins from the same amount of metal. Initially, debasement was subtle and gradual, intended to avoid public backlash. Over time, however, the reduction became more severe. The silver denarius, once nearly pure, steadily lost its silver content. By the 3rd century CE, some coins contained only traces of silver, with bronze making up most of the metal. The outward appearance remained similar, but intrinsic value declined sharply. Debasement had several consequences. Prices rose as merchants demanded more coins for goods. Savings lost value, confidence in currency weakened. Barter increased in some regions. Inflation particularly harmed soldiers and fixed-income earners. To compensate, emperors raised military wages, which further increased money supply and inflation. This created a cycle that became increasingly difficult to control. As trust in coinage declined, people began hoarding older, higher-quality coins. This reduced circulation of reliable money and accelerated economic instability. Local economies fragmented, and long-distance trade weakened. Debasement temporarily solved fiscal problems, but damaged the long-term credibility of Roman money. It highlighted the dangers of manipulating currency to fund state spending, an issue that would reappear in many later civilizations. By the 3rd century CE, Rome faced a full-scale monetary and economic crisis. Political instability, External invasions, declining trade, and shrinking tax revenue placed enormous pressure on the imperial economy. The monetary system reflected these deeper structural problems. Frequent changes in leadership disrupted fiscal policy. Emperors rose and fell rapidly, often relying on military support purchased through bonuses and increased pay. This further strained finances and encouraged continued debasement. Trade networks weakened as insecurity spread across borders. Roads in cities deteriorated, reducing commercial activity. Tax collection became less efficient, and some regions reverted to payment in goods rather than coin. Inflation eroded purchasing power, and price controls were introduced in an attempt to stabilize markets. The most famous example was Emperor Diocletian's edict on maximum prices. While intended to control inflation, it largely failed and pushed trade into black markets. Eventually, reforms were introduced. Diocletian and later Constantine restructured taxation, introduced new gold coinage such as the solidus, and strengthened state control. The solidus restored some monetary stability and remained reliable for centuries in the Eastern Roman Empire. Despite reforms, the Western Roman Empire continued to weaken. Economic fragmentation, reduced trade, and declining monetary trust contributed to its eventual collapse. The Eastern Empire, with stronger administration and gold reserves, survived much longer. Rome's monetary crisis demonstrated that currency stability depends on political stability, productive economy, and public trust. When these factors failed, money lost its effectiveness as a tool of wealth management.